Sukkei de Zimra the last 2 weeks, and we finished the core of Sukkei de Zimra, which was Ashrei.
Right.
And then after Ashrei, we go into the end of Sukkei de Zimra. So we have Az Yashir, which is the song of the people, right? So this is in the end. This we read a few weeks ago in Parashat Bishalach, is Az Yashir, and then Moshe and the nation sing. But today we're going to focus on page 400, a specific one, a beautiful, beautiful song that is in the end, that is only said on Shabbat and holidays in Psukei de Zimra, and it is also said on one other occasion during the night. Nishmat kol chai. So Nishmat kol chai, yep, right over there. The soul of every living being. Okay, Nishmat kol chai is a prayer that is specific for Shabbat and holidays. We don't say it on everyone. And it has the prayer that says, if our mouths were filled with praise like the waves of the ocean, it still wouldn't be enough to praise you, right? So this is wrapping up Sukkei de Zimra. But this prayer is a very, very unique prayer that there is a dispute who writes it. We'll get to that soon. So let's go through some of the words. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Hashem Elokeinu veruach kol basar tefaer veteromem shimcha zichrecha malkeinu tamid. So the soul of every living being should praise your name Hashem, our God, and the wind, the spirit of the flesh, of every single flesh, should exalt you, our King, from now and forever. Min ha'olam ata el, min ha'olam ve'ad ha'olam ata el, umibaladecha en lanu melech goel u'mashiach. The boundaries, you are the King, you are the Redeemer, you are our Savior. Goel u'mashiach, podeh u'matzil, the one who our liberator, our rescuer, our mefarnes, the one who sustains us.
Rabbi, can I ask,
Yeah.
what does liberator mean in that context?
The one who frees us, the one who brings Mashiach, the one who, right, so to liberate us from our slavery, the one who liberates us from our enemies, umirachem, and the one who has, who's merciful, bichol et tzara v'tzukah, in every moment, in every time of hardship and pain. En lanu melech ela ata. We have no king besides you. This I'm going to skip a little bit because a lot of it is very repetitive. Okay, and it continues to the second from last line. Ilu pinu maleh shira kayam. If our mouths were filled, is still on page 400, on the bottom of 400. If our mouths were filled with song like the ocean, and our tongue can praise like the amount of the endless amount of waves, and our lips have endless praise like the horizon, and our eyes are brilliant like the sun and like the moon, and our hands spread out like the eagle's wings, right? And our feet are as gentle as the deer, as swift as the antelopes. En anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha. There is not enough praises to thank you, our God and our God of our fathers. Even 1 out of 1,000 thousands, right? Like there is nothing that we can say that would ever come close to that praise for the good that you have done for our fathers and for us, from Egypt you have redeemed us, and you've redeemed us from house of slavery. And then this continues for a long time of more and more and more and more praise, and it finishes with Barchi nafshi et Hashem. My soul, my neshama will bless God. V'kol kiravai, and my intestines, right? Like everything, like from myself, will scream out God's name. Ha'el b'ta'atzumot uzecha. So this is something where you already hear the Chazan starts from here on festivals, but on Shabbat he starts in the next part. Ha'el b'ta'atzumot uzecha, the God that that's in the heaven, Hagadol bichvod shemecha, that is great with his honor, Hagibor lenetzach, who is brave forever, V'hanora benorotecha, and his might is forever and awesome through your awesome deeds. Hamelech hayoshev al kisei ram v'nisa, the king who sits on the high throne. This is where we start from. The Chazan starts from on the holidays. On the rest of the Shabbatot, Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo, he who abides forever on top of everything. V'katuv ranenu tzadikim b'Hashem, the righteous will praise Hashem. Le'yesharim navat tehila, and for those who are straight, who follow God's path, the praise is fitting. And here, Ronnie will say, if you remember from your Nosach, the nuances, because it skips a little. B'fi yesharim tit halal, u'v'divrei tzadikim tit barach, u'v'ilshon chasidim tit romam, u'v'kerev kedoshim tit kadash. In the mouths of those who are straight, who follow your path, you should be praised. All of this is different ways of praise. In the words of the righteous, you should be blessed. With the tongues of the Chasidim, of those who go beyond, of the devout, you should be exalted. Uvekerev kedoshim, and among those who are holy, you should be sanctified. Roni, do you remember
Yes, because it changes. So right after the tit, it will be like this is Yitzchak, it will be Rivka.
Very good.
So it's tit romam, tit barach, tit kadash, tit barach.
Wonderful. Okay, so you see how there is highlighted Yitzchak.
Yeah.
So when we are familiar.
Exactly.
Right.
So if you look here.
Yeah.
So if you look on the other side, Ashkenazim don't have, except on the high holidays where it is switched around. And if you look at like the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur ones, the adjective that goes with the noun in the beginning switches, and they move like how the Sfaradim do, and then it also spells out Rivka on the other side. Okay,
Because it says. So
if you look at the second word, at the second letter, at the third letter, right?
So after the taf, there is hey. The other one says bet. The other one says reish, and the other one says kuf. And then for Sephardic and for high holidays for Ashkenazis, they change the adjectives around.
And it says, so it's B'fi Yesharim, the third line, Tit Romam, right? Because that's where the reish is. And U'v'divrei tzadikim, the second line, it would be same, right? Because it's still with the bet. And then for the third line, it would be Chasidim tit kadash, where it's on the fourth, and B'kerev kedoshim tit halal, which is the first one, right? So it gets switched around. So we have this it like wraps up a prayer that we'll only say on Shabbat and on holidays. It wraps up the entire Psukei de Zimra. And the question is, why is it only said on Shabbat and holidays? Why would we only say something like this on Shabbat and holidays? Give a guess.
Because then it won't be too important if we say it every day.
Because it is a very important prayer.
So we're also in a different zone, sort of, on those days.
Very good. We're in a different zone. What does that mean, we're in a different zone? Take it a step further, right? What does it mean we're in a different zone?
Well, high holy days, we really are in a different zone.
Right.
But even on Shabbat.
We're in a different zone from weekdays.
From weekdays, we are in a elevated situation, right? To begin with, on Shabbat holidays, high holidays, we are in a different spiritual mindset. And because of that, we have different things. For example, Chazal tell us, they say, we have what's called a neshama yetera, an extra neshama that comes down for Shabbat, right? That's why you don't gain calories for anything you eat on Shabbos.
Yeah.
It all goes straight to heaven, right? Like, you can get away with anything. So on Shabbat, you get an extra neshama, and this is part of the Havdalah ceremony, is the Besamim, like, release it back into that other realm. There's a whole bunch of things that go into what is this extra neshama and why do we have it? What is going on Shabbat? So on Shabbat, we are spiritual enough to be able to say this prayer. I'll take it a little bit a step further because I named my daughter Shabbat. So I talked about this quite a lot when she was born. Ashira is named Ashira Shabbat Hallelujah.
Was she born on?
She was born on, I think, a Monday. Or Tuesday.
Right.
Maybe Wednesday. I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, giving birth in a third world country on Shabbos and being stuck there for a weekend would have been rough. So luckily it's in the middle of the week, but we talked about the name Shabbat ahead of time. Shabbat is not of this realm, right? Shabbat, its entire essence is the Garden of Eden, right? It is a spiritual realm. And this is that neshama that we get, right? When there was a story, a Hasidic story of, it was a Chabad, one of the Chabad rabbis, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad rabbi, I think, that he wanted to know how a different one of the rabbis from a different Hasidut, how he accepts in Shabbos, right? Like a big rabbi has a procedure of like what you do to alter in to usher in the Shabbat. So he sent one of his students to spend the moments before Shabbat. You'd assume he's going over the Parsha, going to mikvah, doing, things that for preparing for Shabbat. And he sees that the rabbi is sitting out on his balcony smoking a pipe, right? A lot of Hasidic rabbis smoked pipes. This is not a unique thing. But he's sitting there and smoking a pipe. And in the last moments before Shabbat comes in, he calls the student to him and he says, can you see how the clouds of the weekday are making room for the clouds of Shabbat? Can you see how the birds have changed their tune from the tune of the weekday to the tune of Shabbat? The entire world changes its existence on Shabbat, right? There's something extremely spiritual in those moments of that transition into Shabbat. So because of that, this prayer, that is a very, very, very special prayer, is said only on Shabbat and should not be said just on a regular day. Who wrote it? And this may give us a hint of why it is so special. And the other thing is, when is the other time that we say this? It's actually coming up soon. It's in an evening, at night, that we say Nishmat Kol Chai. What night of the year would we say Nishmat Kol Chai? This type of praise.
Pesach.
Erev Pesach. Yes.
Pesach.
Yes.
During the Seder.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
And it turns out that if you look at the origin of this, the first time it is mentioned is in the Gemara that talks about Pesach. And it predates the discussion about it being in the Siddur. There is a whole discussion about it being as a prayer of praise after it is basically connected to the Hallel of Pesach and says, we should praise in this holiest night of the year. This is the prayer that comes in. So, who wrote this? We see that a lot of prayers that we have and a lot of poetry that we have, people hide their name in it, right? So, for example, the most famous one that you can find is Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi is written by Rav Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, right? And he writes it in the letters of right? The first one, Shamar v'Zacho, that's the Shin, right? Lamed, Mem, right? Hey, it's all over there. So he writes Shlomo Halevi, and that's how he signs his name, right? That's how he signs his name into the Siddur, right? So this is quite common. So the first assumption is there's someone named Yitzchak that writes this. Who is this Yitzchak? We don't know. And then later on, the Sfaradim switch around this word, and it says Yitzchak, Rivka. Now, because this is a later version, the Ashkenazi Siddur predates the Sephardi and Edat HaMizrach Siddur, there are a lot of people who do not agree to this opinion, but say that Yitzchak and Rivka, this is not the prayer that they said, but someone wrote it as the prayer that when we read about Yitzchak and Rivka not being able to have children, it's the time that it says that a husband and wife prayed. And it's a very, very powerful prayer that this ends up bringing Yaakov into the world, right? So that's and twins. Yeah, and twins. Yeah, Yaakov. We're going to focus on the good, okay? Yaakov into the world, and because of that, this is compiled. Now, if you look at the story of what happens over there, it says that Rivka cannot have children, and it says that Yitzchak notices, and he starts to pray. It says that she prays and he prays, and God answers his prayer, right? There's a huge question of why is God answering his prayer and not her prayer. And this goes back to a little bit of an understanding. We talked about this a little bit on Sukkot, of the different type of the different attributes of the avot, of our forefathers, right? So we have Avraham, who is all chesed, it's all charity, right? And if you went to Avram and said, I'm sick, right? He would say, let me pray for you. Because charity, we should fix this. And if you went to Yitzchak, who was din, he was justice, this is what's supposed to happen, and he said, I'm sick, he would say, you deserve it, right? That's why you're sick. If God decided that you would be sick, therefore, it has been decided. You should figure out what you've done as opposed to let me pray for you. So Yitzchak, in his nature, does not believe in prayer. Yitzchak does not believe in prayer, and this is the reason that Rivka cannot have children. The reason Rivka cannot have children is because Yitzchak's prayer needs to be brought into the world, and to make that happen, Rivka will not have children until Yitzchak will pray to change that. And therefore, two separate opinions look at it and say, either this is Yitzchak's prayer, referring to Yitzchak Avinu, or this is Yitzchak and Rivka's prayer, referring to Yitzchak Avinu. But here is something that gets quite crazy. This is a part of history that is not talked about, and it's like Mossad level secrets that happened, and probably greater than that in the grand scheme of history. In the time of early Christianity, there was a lot of missionizing. It happened throughout a lot of Christianity, but there was quite a lot of missionizing happening. And at the time, the way that they were missionizing, and this has had cycles.
So missionizing to Christianity.
To Christianity.
Not missionizing more Jews.
Well, missionizing Jews into Christianity,
Yeah, just
right?
checking.
So when they were doing that, the claim towards the Jews was, we are basically the same religion, right? And it's when in the early ages of Christianity, it's hard to argue to say that they weren't, right? The original Christians had to be halachically Jewish. If you were a non-Jew who wanted to become a Christian, you converted to Judaism to become a Christian. Okay? There's a lot of history that
Who were the non-Jew, like, what sort of people were they, the non-Jews?
could be Romans, it could be other people.
Yeah, that's so
I'm saying it can be any people in the land
Yeah.
that were interested in this message. Our history with Christianity has been very, very bad. Up until recently, it's been very, very bad. So when we read from our perspective, we just look at it and say it's all bad. Remembering that Christianity is based off of Judaism completely, right? Yeshu, right, which is how we refer to Jesus. So I'm just going to keep on referring to him as Yeshu. Yeshu is Jewish. And all he preaches is Judaism. He just has a little zing to him. He would never try to create Christianity because it was so far from what he believed. He tried to create Reform Judaism, right? He looks at it and goes something very, very simple. If you're reading from our perspective, other things being written down, what's happening at the time of the Second Temple, we hear that the Jewish people as a whole are focusing on the commandments that have to do between God and man, and not between man and man. It's quite simple, right? Like you can read through it in the Gemara, and you see this happening over and over and over again, that people have taken it a step too far and say, for my personal elevation and getting closer to God, I'm willing to harm you, right? Now there's 10 commandments. We have 613 commandments, but we'll look at the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are on 2 luchot, on 2 tablets. One side focuses on commandments between God and man, right? I'm God, don't worship other idols, right? That's between man and God. Then the other ones are between man and man. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. When you look at them, you see there's that divide. We were focusing primarily on the right side, primarily on the first set. And we look at it and say, if the goal is to get closer to God, it's a race, and let's stumble over everybody. And the example that is given in the Gemara is a story that happened in the temple. There is the honor of removing the ashes from the altar in the morning, okay? It's a very big honor because it's the guy who opens the door in the morning, right? You can't do anything until the ashes are removed and the new wood is placed, right? So you can start the fire and start bringing offerings. So the way that it was done is originally there was a raffle. But how did it become, how was it determined later on? It was determined by a race. And while this may not sound very spiritual, this was how they were trying to figure out. There's so many Kohanim. It's a huge honor. If I choose you 3 times and you once, that's not fair, right? So how are we going to do it? Anyone who hasn't had a chance yet lines up on the bottom of the ramp. And on the count of 3 races, the first one up will get to do it today. That was how it was decided. One day, one of the Kohanim is almost on the top. Number 2 sees he's number 2 and realizes he will always be number 2. And he takes out his knife and he stabs number 1 in the back. Number 1 falls off of the altar and is bleeding to death in the temple, right? Like every word here should make your bones chill, right? And the father of the priest that is dying says, quickly take the knife out. My son isn't dead. The knife has not become impure yet. Right? Because the knife is a holy thing that is used in the temple, and it cannot become impure. It's a very big no-no, right? Like, you need it to be holy. And as long as it hasn't come in contact with death, then it will be holy. But if his son would die with a knife in his back, the knife itself would become unholy. So he says, quickly take the knife out. My son hasn't died yet. The knife has not become impure yet. There's a list of these stories that are told that are called like the beginning of the end, right? Like that's the category. It's like at that point, we lost it. We lost it completely. When that is the level of what we're talking about is, I'm willing to kill you to get closer to God, I clearly don't understand what it means to be close to God. And when we look at the later prophets, the way they talk about it, they keep on repeating this line over and over again. They say, God is saying this very, very clearly. I do not want your offerings. I want you to treat people well. Treat the widow and the orphan fairly, right? Make sure that you are treating people well. But this does not mean cancel out all the other mitzvahs. It means be a mensch, right? Derech eretz kadma laTorah. Being a mensch comes before the other mitzvahs, right? In other words, Jewish ethics are ethics, right? Or ethics are Jewish ethics. Before you start saying, did I blow the shofar long enough, loud enough, in this way or that way, say, one second, am I behaving in an appropriate manner, right? Those are the questions that need to happen. Now, this is not in any way to cancel out the other mitzvahs, but it is showing you how to behave. There's the story of the convert who comes to Hillel, and he says, teach me the entire Torah on one foot, right? In one sentence. What is the entire Torah? And Hillel tells him, what you don't want to be done to you, don't do unto others. Rabbi Akiva says, what is the biggest rule of the Torah? Love your neighbor as yourself. Yeshu looks at this and says, we're killing each other. Let's go back to the basics. Forget all the 612 other commandments. Keep one. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Like that's Christianity. One mitzvah that should be able to be the answer. But what ends up happening? It becomes the most violent religion that has ever lived. If Muslims today would have killed every single Jew that is alive, today, Christians will still have killed more Jews throughout history. Yeah. The amount of blood that has been spilled by Christians over history is uncountable. And it is, we if you told your grandparents that one day we will have Christian allies and Muslims are trying to kill us, they would say you're crazy, right? That is it's a wacky Wednesday kind of situation. Everything is upside down. There's no way that Christians will ever support us, right? It's polar opposites, but it's not. There are Judeo-Christian values, right? If you would have told your great-grandparents that Muslims one day would be chasing us, they'd say, being under Muslim rule has always been better than being under Christian rule. Always, right? Every once in a while there was a spike and, this king decides to chase and there's a pogrom here. But Christians, it was always bad. There's not a good part of history of being under Christian rule, right? Recently, they started behaving again, but what about all of history? So when we're looking at these things, we're saying, what ended up happening with Christianity? Christianity made the same exact mistake that Judaism did on the other side, right? It said, let's focus on one mitzvah. We said, let's focus on the mitzvah of being close to God. And they said, let's focus on the mitzvah of being close to people and just throw everything else out. And even if you want to look at it and say that is the best mitzvah, right? Which I don't really believe that we do. But let's say you want to look at it and say that's the best mitzvah. At a certain point, you are losing everything else around it, right? The Torah is perfection. The laws are divine. They are given by God. So, if you remove things from it or change the recipe, eventually, you don't have the same thing, right? You've made a cake before, right? How many times can you change the ingredients before it's no longer a cake, right? You know the kid who brings the gluten-free cake to school, the gluten-free and sugar-free and egg-free cake, and so, this happens all the time. It's terrible, right? And I was a teacher, and there was a kid his mother brought a gluten-free, sugar-free, egg-free cake, and the kids came over and said, "Do we have to eat it?"
Oh.
Right? It's not cake. Right? It's not cake. If you take out all of the things that make it sweet and yummy, it's not cake. But even if you look at it from Christian's point of view and say, this mitzvah of love your neighbor as yourself is the sugar, right? Say, okay, so you're eating sugar. You are not eating a cake, right? You have thrown everything else out the window. You are not eating a cake, right? So when we're looking at this, we are understanding that the original version of Christianity was an easier version of Judaism. That was the goal. It's Reform Judaism. It's more flexible. It's more about the Tikkun Olam and all of the let's just all get together and kumbaya vibes, right? And very quickly, it went off the rails. This is the story of, to an extent, where Christianity and Judaism split off into two different religions completely. Christianity is no longer Judaism the day they decide that Yeshu is God, right? That's a dangerous thing, right? Like, you want to believe that he's the Messiah, you want to believe like that, we can agree to disagree, right? Chabad, there are those of Chabad who believe today completely that the Rebbe is Mashiach, and we say he had the neshama of Mashiach, there was potential for Mashiach, but he passed away, and therefore he is not Mashiach, right? And any argument afterwards, right, isn't going to suffice for me, right? But there's still Judaism. We can argue about, is he Mashiach, is he not Mashiach, who Mashiach is. I was told this to a pastor once when we were arguing if Yeshua is the Mashiach or not. I told him, I said, one day, the two of us were the representatives of our religions in Kenya. Mashiach comes, we will go and meet him. One of us will be very surprised, right? That's not what we're going to be fighting about. But if you think that he's God, we're already talking two different religions, right? We lost the common ground. And at that point, Christianity is still trying to get Jews to join the religion by basically saying, we are the same religion. Completely. You have the old copy, we have 2.0, right? We have like the newer edition that was brought down. It's recent, you didn't get the copy, you didn't get the memo, that's okay, but we have it for you, right? And it was succeeding. They were convincing Jews to convert to Christianity. There was a man at the time, a rabbi, named Shimon Kippah. And we're talking first century, right? Shimon Kippah is sitting down with the rabbis of the generation and says, we need to find a way to split Christianity off, like give him such a push that it is clear to everyone it's not Judaism. Right? Because right now it's too similar of a religion that they're managed to missionize. But if we can create a big enough rift between us religiously, then can stop assimilation. This is a massive take. And what he does is
Excuse me, by assimilation, do you mean
turn
towards Christianity?
Towards
or
Christianity.
towards nothing?
towards Christianity,
Towards Christianity.
converting, like they are becoming, they are converting to Christianity, and Chazal have their hands tied. They cannot figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So Shimon Kippah, according to this midrash, it's a very, very interesting story. It gets a little crazy, and it says that he goes and he steals God's explicit name as Yeshua, as Jesus did beforehand, right? This is something that the Gemara says that this is the way that he performed miracles, right? All the miracles that they describe is by uttering God's explicit name. There's a ton of different names, but this is what's called the name of the 42 letters, and this is the letters of Ana Bekoch, right? Of Kabbalat Shabbat. We started doing it a few weeks ago. So if you look, here, we can even skip for a second to this. It's on page 300 and 314, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 314. If you look at the left column, you see that there are 42 letters, and those that is a divine name, that there was a secret that was kept in the temple because only the Kohen Gadol knew how to pronounce it, because there was a parchment that had this name written down with the nikud, with the vowels of how to pronounce it. And being able to pronounce it gave people supernatural abilities to do miracles. And according to Chazal, Yeshu steals this name and says it and walks on water, right? And heals the lepers, and right, like he creates miracles by using God's explicit name. There is references to it, okay?
Do we believe that those miracles happened?
There are opinions that say that they did. There is a lot of dark magic, right? Like this is not something that Judaism denies. You are capable of creating things. So we read a few weeks ago, God tells Moshe and Aaron, go hit the Nile and it will turn into blood. And then Paro says, my sorcerers can do that too. They get water and turn it into blood, right? Aaron throws his staff and it becomes a snake. They throw their staffs and it becomes snakes, right? There is sorcery in the world. There is a magic, a dark source that things could be drawn from. There's also a holy source that things can be drawn from. With specifically with all of the miracles that are associated with Christianity and things that Yeshua may or may not have done, Chazal attributed to the fact that he steals this explicit name, and with this he performs miracles, and therefore they are against him. This is not to say, oh, he's performing miracles, isn't that wonderful? But rather, this is an evil, wicked man who is doing something that is against everything and must be stopped. That is the perspective, right? Like there's a lot of animosity towards him. And this is the source for it. Okay? Now, Shimon Kippah, according to tradition, goes and steals does the same thing, and goes in to join the Christian leaders and becomes the Apostle Peter. And he goes and he tells them, he says, I am the reincarnation of Jesus, or I am I am the messenger of Jesus. And he tells them, he says,
this is after Jesus.
This is after he dies. And he says, right, follow my lead, right? Because he ends up being a leader, right? Saint Peter, right? He ends up being the leader that makes massive amounts of changes in Christianity, right? And with what authority? With the fact that he is either the reincarnation or the next leader in Christianity. They say, prove it by doing the same miracles that Jesus did. And they bring a leper before him, and he says God's explicit name and heals him, right? Now, this rabbi becoming apostle, right, is a secret agent of Chazal, according to this midrash. It is a very controversial story.
So he's an infiltrator.
He infiltrates into Christianity, and he says, we will no longer be keeping the Sabbath on Shabbat, but rather on Sunday. This was the first step to kick off the separation of religions. Right? Like, that is a very powerful thing. There is a spy, right, that goes in and leads Christianity and starts changing things, right? Are they going to be keeping all Old Testament mitzvahs or only New Testament mitzvahs? Are they keeping Shabbos or Sunday? What holidays? What does it look like? Creating new holidays. All of these things are shaping Christianity. And it's shaping Christianity in a way that basically, if a Christian comes to me and says, we're the same exact religion, I can look at him and go, what are you talking about? Right? A generation beforehand, it was a hard argument to say we're not. Right? It just, they believed the Mashiach came, and we say, no, he didn't. Right? And over here we're saying, you have drifted off into a new religion. And it says that at the end of his life, he writes Nishmat Kol Chai. And he asks for it to be put in the holiest times as his confession and prayer to acknowledge the fact that there is only one God, and to ask forgiveness for the fact that he has been going and spreading, the Trinity, that he is going and very clearly speaking up against one God. But he wants to make it clear that he never believes it. And he writes this prayer, and it gets put in to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, into Leil HaSeder, and into Shabbat and holidays as a special prayer of acknowledging that there is only one God, that this God creates miracles, and everything, even all the bad that we're seeing, and in every place, God is there to help and save, right? And he is saying, if you look at it from his perspective, from a person who sacrificed his reputation, right? He could have been written down in the Jewish book of history, which he's not, right? He's an undercover agent. You'll never know what a lot of Mossad agents did, right? Because their names will never be known. And this is found in very few text mentions of him because of this. And there's a lot of Chazal that attack him as Shimon Kippah. They attack him as a Jew who goes off the derech and became a Christian and is a traitor, right? Either they didn't know, or they kept his cover, right? But either way, being remembered in Jewish history as the big rabbi who became an apostle is never a good thing, right? So he burns his reputation. He burns every bridge that he had in his life.
That was a very brave thing.
And
to
he
do.
takes the sacrifice to go and change Christianity, to separate it from Judaism, so that it would stop assimilation of Jews converting to Christianity. Or so the tale says.
And did
Right?
it work?
Clearly not.
To an extent.
No,
I'm saying To an
It's
extent.
not what I've worked in that they created a separate religion, except there's 15 million Jews and 2 billion Christians.
Well, so yes, it was never. We were that's a whole other question, right? So we talked about this last Shabbat, right?
Yeah.
We don't count Jews. Why don't we count Jews?
Okay.
This is not a new thing. Moshe is told not to count the nation.
Right.
King David is told not to count the nation. We are never meant to be a large people. I very much hold of the opinion that our job in the world gets summed up in Aleinu of Bayom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad. In that day, the whole world will know that there's one God and His name is one. And we'll talk about that a lot more when we get to Aleinu, because Aleinu is fascinating. But what does that mean, there will be one God? How do we get that understanding, right? So Christianity says everybody must convert to Christianity. Then everybody will know there's one God. Islam says everybody must convert to Islam, and then there'll be one God. We say we don't missionize. Excuse me, if you don't missionize and you believe the whole world should know that there's one God, then you're gonna fail, right? Like you are not gonna be able to get the
Not a good advertising.
not a great advertising of like we're not really looking for converts and looking to like expand the business model, but we would like everybody to know this message. And yet, everybody knows this message that there is one God. I've been to villages in Africa and they've heard of God, right? Left pagan religions and know that there's God. I've been to places in Far East Asia that know that there's one God. Here at the end of the world, people know that there's one God, right? Everywhere, every corner of the earth, people know that there's one God. How did that happen? Because we've birthed other religions. We've created Christianity and we created Islam. They are byproducts of Judaism, right? And they can trace back to us, and they do. In a theological way, they refer back to us as their grandfather or father religion.
How did we birth Islam?
Islam, Muhammad says, I did not come to contradict what came before me, right? I am the continuation of Avram and Moshe and Jesus, and there's me, right? It's in the basis of Islam, they are just 3.0, right? He's like, hey, it worked for Christianity, let's try it as well. So Muhammad goes and tries to tell Christians and Jews, listen, we believe in one God, and I am just the last prophet, right? Everybody's got to be the last. So I'm just the last prophet.
What was the Islam view of the Trinity?
Less favorable, right? But there's no problem of believing in Jesus as a prophet, okay? And they have a lot of respect for him, right? But then when they're looking at the continuation, Muhammad's the last prophet, right? And Muhammad in the Quran and the Hadiths has interactions, mostly in the Hadiths, has interactions with Jesus, with Moshe, right? Like they're buddies. They sit and they talk, and right, like because it's all the same religion. The definition of the word Islam means Arabic speakers, in the room. What does the word Islam mean?
From Salam, from Shalom.
No, not from Shalom and Shalom. Islam means to surrender, to give, to surrender to God, right? That is the definition of the word Islam. So, if you ask a Muslim, was Abraham Jewish? They would say no, he was a Muslim. Was Moshe Jewish? No, he was a Muslim. And Jesus was a Muslim. And everyone who surrendered to one God is a Muslim. And they will often tell you, you are Muslim enough, right? That there's a saying in Islam that refers to Jews and Christians as Muslim enough, and therefore they don't have a commandment to convert us. We are not infidels, right? Because we believe in one God, we are Muslim enough. We should be doing better, but we're Muslim enough.
They
right?
say that we were the ones that went off the road.
Correct. So their claim of why they're allowed to attack us now is because we have left Moshe's Torah, and therefore we are no longer that nation of Israel. That's their claim. right? So it's a discussion, right? It's a discussion of, are we in the right path? According to what they believe, we are not. According to what we believe, we're not doing a great job proving that we're as a nation are on the right path all the time, right? And when you talk about everything that's happening politically, you talk to religious leaders, it's all about, like, the whole discussion is a religious discussion, right? It's, if you would talk the religious talk and fight the religious fight, we wouldn't be having this argument. But because you are trying to talk political boundaries of, what the UN says, well, we can fight that. We can fight politics, right? You want to have it as a Zionist movement, you want to come as European Zionists and say this and say that, that's not acceptable. If you come and say, God gave us the land in the Torah, here is where it is, oh, that is the conversation. And they accept that conversation. And I've had that conversation. The conversation only goes off the rails when it is political. When it is biblical, they agree with it. But we're too afraid to ever say, let's talk religion. We always say, no, it's a political sphere. It's not a political sphere. It's never been a political sphere. The only ones who think it's a political sphere are Europeans and Americans who want to make it into a political sphere. It's never been political. So, with that, right, we're going to go back to did our mission work and did their mission work? Our mission worked. The entire world knows there's one God. It didn't happen in the way we wanted it to happen, right? But parts of it, right? Think also, again, I go with a holistic view. Ishmael is the father, theological father of Islam. Esav is the theological father of Christianity. That is how we refer to it. Esav is Edom. Edom is Rome. Rome is Christianity. That is the lineage of how Chazal refer to Christianity as a direct descendant of Esav. Esav is referred to as Edom. Edom ends up becoming the empire of Rome, and the Roman Empire becomes Christianity. The Roman Empire. Esav is referred to in the Torah as Edom. And Edom later on is referred to as Romi, as Rome, okay? And Rome becomes Christian.
But Ishmael was before.
Yeah, Ishmael is before. Ishmael and Yitzchak,
Yes.
right?
So
Yaakov
I'm
and
saying-
Esav.
Yes.
So
Ishmael was so.
Right, we're talking. It's backwards.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you
As long
are
as you tell
right.
me it's backwards, I won't go
you
back.
are right. It's I'm looking at it from this like holistic point of view of Avraham has a mission that the world will know there's one God.
Yeah.
It happens through his two sons, Judaism and Islam. And then his son of Judaism, Yitzchak, births Judaism and Christianity. And through Christianity and Islam, it spreads to the whole world, right? It's like an upside down tree.
Yeah.
It all will funnel down into Avraham and this mission of the world knowing that there's one God. So it does happen. It does funnel, it does exist. Okay? And in that path, the way that it happens, right, we look at it and say, our goal succeeded. The world knows there's one God. We were never meant to be the big part of the world. We were never supposed to be 1 billion Jews, right? We shouldn't be. Huh?
But we have been, because if you think
historically,
if you think God said would be as numerous as the stars of the ground, if you think how many Jews there have been over the
millennium.
Yeah.
We have been that numerous.
We have been that numerous, but at every point we've been a small percentage, right?
I just added it up.
Yeah. And we've survived everything, and we will continue surviving until the end of time, right? There's no question about it. But when we're looking at that perspective of how much, why have we never become a massive nation? If we have survived everyone, and we're people that believe in having a lot of children, right? Like, why have we not outgrown? Well, we don't missionize. We don't convert people. Christianity and Islam converted by the sword. We don't believe in doing that, right? So just bringing it back, did this plot succeed to separate Judaism and Christianity into two separate religions? It did, right? Two different worlds, right? And there's a value in that, and there's a reason for that, and all of those things. Was his sacrifice a good thing or not? Would it have just become Reformed Judaism and eventually died off or changed? Or it could be. It could be that it would have taken its natural course and have become Christianity that we know, with all of the problems of the Crusades and the pogroms and everything else. But they would have managed to missionize a tremendous amount more, because they were always, they would have stayed too close to us, right? It's better to have them separate and not as the similar entity, right? That is an understanding. Now, it happens to be that not every Sidur that has been printed has put in Nishmat Kol Chai, for that exact reason.
That it might be.
That it might be from the Apostle Peter that wrote it, and different opinions about that. Rashi, for example, says there is no way that Peter wrote this, and discredits it completely, right? But this is a massive argument that happens about 1,000 years ago within the period of what's called the Rishonim, of who wrote this, and if it's Peter, do we put it in? Do we believe in it as this prayer? And the bottom line ends up being that we don't know, but we know that there is something immensely intense about this prayer. We know that for generations there have been discussions and a hypothesis that it is possibly by this great rabbi, Mossad agent, right, who infiltrated his way into Christianity and saved Judaism by differentiating us from Christianity. And I think that at least is worth contemplating about. Okay, with this we're finishing Shochanad and Nishmat Kol Chai.
Thank you.
Can I say thank you very much
Yeah.
for the talk that you gave at Shalom?